to African Teapot Podcast. My name is Exie and I'm your host. Journey with me through Africa's vast variety of culture, heritage, and discuss issues most African families face, both home and abroad. Make sure you add this podcast to your frequent podcast rotations, and don't forget to share and follow this podcast. Hello guys, and thank you so much for tuning in for this week's episode on African Teapot. And today's episode is titled Raising Confident Kids. And the proverb that goes with it, which I thought was perfect, is spare the rod and spoil the child. This is a very common proverb that almost every African has heard, or it has been used in them, by their parents or loved ones at some point in their, young adult life, or pretty much just your young life, right? You must have heard this at some point. But I thought we should have this conversation based off of why I was inspired to do it. And before I get into our little exchange or a little conversation, just want to have a quick birthday shout out to Sandy Handler. It's Sandra Handler, but I call her Sandy Handler. But hopefully you had an amazing birthday, darling. And you had fun as well this past weekend. I know you did. You talked about it. But I just thought I should say happy birthday yet again to you. Anyways, now getting into why we're here, or why, you're listening to me. A few days ago, I had a friend send me a video of a lady who was very, very upset of her kid not receiving a trophy or at a school, like a school occasion, a school ceremony, right? Trophy, what do I mean? I mean, they were giving out trophies like for best in math, best in English, best in sport, so forth and so on, right? For different categories. And her kid did not receive it, and her kid was upset about it. And she thought, she would go get a gift or a trophy for her child. And she did that, and she posted it on social media. She made a video, posted it out there. And so many parents and people had a lot to say, obviously. Some were encouraging her, saying, well, it's good. It's going to boost the child's confidence. It's going to make the child feel loved. And some people were saying, well, they were against it, right? Like, they had their reasons for being against it. But she said she did it to encourage her kid. That is the reason why she did it. And she thought it was unfair for the school to come out and give some kids trophies and not others. Like, it weighs down on the morale of the kid, or of the the rest of the children who didn't receive anything. And so after I watched that video, I got to talking to my friend, and it was like a time travel kind of thing. We found ourselves talking about our childhood growing up in Cameroon, and we were comparing that to children who are raised nowadays in the same Cameroon, and children who are raised in current day that we see every day, like in the States or in different parts of the world, like the Western world, right? So it brought up that conversation, and we visited childhood memories. It was fun, and some of it was not so fun, but you were trying to draw lessons out of it and trying to see how that made us who we are today, if we are confident or if we are not, if that kind of makes sense. But that is the little story behind today's episode. So after discussing with my friend, I went ahead to talk to my mom about it, and I realized that her stories were slightly different from mine, but yet the same values were now used or were embedded in the way she was raised, and the same values were embedded in the way she raised me, right? So at the end of the day, I'm like, is it really the action that the child receives, or is the value of what you're putting in your kid? Hopefully this makes sense. But let me go ahead and let's go ahead and see those things that when we say you're raising a confident kid, what that means. Because most often than not, when you say you want to raise a confident child, in our society, it is seen as though you want to raise an arrogant kid, or you want to raise a rude kid, right? Something like that. But there are reasons, or why we say confidence. We want people to understand, or our society to understand what we mean by raising confident kids, the benefit of that. Or when you say a confident child, what does that mean? What are the different parts that make someone be confident, right? As a child and as an adult. So hopefully the points I have out, you all will agree with it. Or if not, it's always encouraged. You have something to add or something you disagree with, please always put it forward, right? Okay. When raising a young mind, teaching a young mind, molding a young mind, we want to instill certain values in them. And some of these values, I would say, is teaching them the value of time investment, teaching them techniques as to solving problems, teaching or encouraging inquisitiveness in their young minds, challenge kids with responsibilities, be comfortable with their emotions. That's teaching them to be comfortable in expressing themselves, making new friends, and creating new relationships when old ones end. And this one is very important. I think it's very important. We need to teach everybody that. We need to re-echo this in every child that we are raising. Or if you find yourself in a position where someone is looking up to you, you need to let them understand. Failure should be seen as a learning opportunity. I know it's hard, even as adults, but it's something that we need to put in the back of our minds. I believe if we tell every child this, the better adult we are producing for the future. Because the future is run by adults. Adults are the ones who determine what happens, be it in politics, be it in economics, religion, or whatever it is, even in social norms and whatever. Adults are the ones who are responsible for that. They run the show. And the only way you can ensure the adult that someone is, or the adult that contributes to society, if they should contribute to society positively or respectfully, is by encouraging them when they're young. Because that's one thing that when I got over here in the States, I realized is slightly different. Not slightly, a lot different. In terms of children are pacified when they're young. And then immediately they become 18, they are hard on these kids. Like, oh, suddenly this is an adult. Suddenly they need to figure out what to do. And in our society, it's like you are exposed to the hardness of life or the hardship that life gives you at a young age. At a young age, in most African countries, kids already understand what poverty is. They already understand what privilege is. You understand what I'm saying? So they know I need to work hard for what I'm getting. And when I put this conversation on social media, a lot of the Africans, that's what they had to say. Oh, my childhood is like I was taught to do things the way or the natural way, or I was taught to do things the way we could afford, so that in future I should be working hard towards the things that I couldn't get. Right? And in our culture, you are encouraged to earn your keep. You're encouraged to earn what you get at the end of the day. I'm not saying, because so many people are going to confuse this with child labor. That's not what I'm talking about. I believe if you want to give, let's go, before I get out of topic, right, which I think I am, but if we want to use our story today, it's like if you buy trophies when your kid hasn't done well at school, then what are you going to get that kid when they eventually do well at school? Or how do you expect the school to encourage the kids that are already doing well, and at the same time encourage those who are not doing well to be like the ones that are doing well, right? We are not saying that schools should encourage one kid to be like the other, but schools should encourage excellence, right? Schools should encourage hard work. How else can a teacher or a school encourage your kid to work hard if it's not to say, hey, John worked hard, that's why he got the trophy. Next year or, next term or next semester, why don't you work harder than what you did today so that you can receive something just as John did? I don't understand why that's wrong. Many parents act as though competition is a problem. Healthy competition is just fine. I grew up in a society where it was okay to compete in class, to be first position or second position or third position, without necessarily harming the next person, without necessarily being insultive or abusive about it, right? It's okay for a teacher to say, good job, John, if John actually made it at the exams. You don't expect him to say good job to Peter if Peter is failing. But that doesn't mean even though Peter is failing, if he's improving, then the teacher will encourage improvements, right? I don't see a teacher like celebrating one child's hard work as taking away from the other. A teacher can celebrate hard work while encouraging someone else to do better. I don't understand why that is a problem. I know some people are going to come at me, but hey, that is just life. That's why you need to teach these kids to be strong. And sometimes I think it's more about us, the adults in their lives, and not about the children. Because I don't think sometimes these kids take it as hard as they do. Because they learn the lesson and they move on. Kids learn and they move on. They're quick. They're strong. We adults are the ones who hold on to things and don't let go of it, right? And please don't come to the extreme side. Here we are just trying to talk or concentrate about confidence in a child, about raising children that are capable to be adults in society, about raising self-reliant kids, teaching your kids to do dishes at the same time, teaching your kids to be able to clean after themselves, teaching your kids to be able to cook at the right ages, teaching your kids to be able to do their laundry, to be able to keep the yard clean, the no, hey, if I spill something, I got to cleaning up. That is not child labor. Because when I was talking about this, that's what someone at work said. Oh, in Africa, I see pictures, it's like it's child labor. I'm like, it's not. If people come from a society where maybe fetching water is miles away, what do you expect the kid to do? They can't hire someone to go fetch them water. So what do you think they should do? That's not child labor. You think the adults can do all of that? You go try living there and doing that all by yourself. You would realize that you have to teach your kid, because guess what? That kid is growing in a society where a few years down the line, they would have to do the same work to fetch water. So why don't you teach them at a young age? You just don't teach them to carry large, buckets of water, but you teach them to start carrying from the little ones. Those kids would appreciate how to economize the water. They would appreciate like, hey, I got this. So next time, if I just have a tap around my house, I should be grateful for it being close to me. And I should be tolerant for those who have to walk miles to come get it if it's close to me. You have to teach children. Tolerance comes on the other end of this as well. But I just find everyone is so much in their feelings and, oh, these kids are so demoralized. I don't see how healthy competition demoralizes a child. Teaching a child how to look after themselves, I don't see how that's wrong. So when they grow in future, they would rely on maids to do these things for them? Or they would just hire someone to take exams for them next time? What value are you actually putting in your kid? Because sometimes we parents are guilty of discipline. We are guilty of correction. And yet suddenly these kids become adults and they become a problem. And suddenly we want someone else to deal with our kids. Suddenly you want the university to deal with your kid, the police to deal with your kid, the judge to deal with your kid, for counselors to deal with your kids, therapists to deal with your kids. But you don't realize you didn't do this when they were young, and that's why there's a problem when they're in the adulthood, right? Sometimes I'm like, you just need to be a little tougher on the kids, and you would realize that their teenage years or their early adulthood will be less stressful on you. You have a lot more to deal with, including the hormones when they go older, whereas you would have done this when they were young, because you ought to do it as a parent. You ought to discipline your child. You ought to tell your child, you know what, you might need something and you don't get it. But that's okay. It's okay to dream, but guess what? It may not happen. You just don't give up. You just keep doing it. That's how kids who don't have thousands of miles away from here succeed. They succeed with words. They succeed with encouragement. They succeed with hope. I don't understand where or why suddenly you have to get material things or give your children free passes to be a good parent, to the point where you're blaming a teacher. So if a teacher can't encourage one student and can't celebrate the one that is doing well, then what is the teacher there for then? And you need to tell your children or teach them how to be on their own. That's how we were raised in Africa. Most Africans would tell us how they were raised. We need to be able to promote common sense in children, not just relying on the gadgets of today. Common sense comes a long way. We also need to teach these kids self-surviving skills. Like they need to be handy. If you don't teach your kid the right information, trust me, they are going to learn something somewhere else in a different way, and you will not have a chance to screen it, or you will not have a chance to come in there and veto it. Hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully me going on and on makes sense. But when I saw that video that I was sent, I couldn't believe a mom was upset because her child didn't get a trophy. And I'm thinking, did you get a trophy to be who you are? And for those kids who can't afford trophies, or whose schools can afford trophies, how are those kids confident? That trophy is not going to put in confidence in your kid. That trophy is not going to make them work harder next semester. That trophy is not going to make them a better person. It's not going to teach them the life skills. That is your job. And I'm sorry, it's not the job of the teacher. The teacher is just enhancing, or he's just highlighting what you should be teaching at home. You're your kid's first teacher. You should be doing that. Not pacifying children when they're young. I don't understand why this is usually confusing for most people. Sometimes care and providing is expressed by spoiling kids. You spoil a kid and you think you're showing love. That's not what it is. Love is a balance. If I grow up as an adult and I realize I'm ignorant about a lot of things that most of my mates know, I'm sorry, I don't care how many trophies you got me. You failed. You understand? We are not saying people should be perfect, but you should try your best to provide a balance in a child. And for African fathers and mothers, me asking you a question when I'm young is not rude. It's better I ask you now than going to ask someone else or just experiencing it later, because our society tends to do that as well. But again, if you have something to add, or you think there was something I said and it's just way out of, scope here, please feel free to let me know, to share. It's always there. And a lot of, I think I'm going to go ahead and do like a comment post on this on Instagram and share it with you guys, because people had a lot of interesting things to say. I realized that as adults, the things that we did, like fetching water, cooking, cleaning, that we all whined about as kids, every adult that I talked to, especially Africans, were happy about that, because it's like, oh, those things taught me to fend for myself today. And that's why Africans leave their home thousands of miles away, come to a different culture, a different place, surrounded by different people, different languages at times, and still you see them doing it on their own and making it and succeeding. They would fail, they would get up again. All of that was brought in because at a young age we were exposed to realities in life. The only thing I would say is that sometimes they would tell us, oh, if you're an inquisitive kid, then you're rude. That is not the case. The child is inquisitive because the mind is growing, their brain is growing. When everything is growing, the head too grows. And so the kid is going to ask you questions. That is not rudeness. Okay? So we should embrace children in terms of, we should embrace their learning. We should give them room to actually learn by experiencing things that happen in life. As adults, someone will get work promotion and you will not. Teach that child from a young age. Like, okay, your classmate is going to get a trophy for doing better than you. It's fine. Your work colleague is going to get a raise before you do. That's okay. Fingers are not equal. Everybody's not equal. You may not be getting a trophy today, but maybe you were good at this. The teacher said you were improving, so maybe next time you're going to get it. Even if you don't get it, you're going to get something down the road that is meant to be yours. You point out those things they're getting that other people don't get. You don't go by to make them feel like John got, so I must get. You are the one encouraging unhealthy competition between the children or amongst the children, not the teacher. Anyways, I'm going to put a pause and stop here, and we'll just pick up this conversation on social media, and hopefully this has raised questions and would raise the conversation, and just have you thinking and be a little bit more grateful for the upbringing you had, if at all you had a balance, right, growing up. And if you find young minds around you, you would try to encourage their growth and try to give them responsibilities, because they are capable of doing it. We are the ones who think they are not. And before I signed off, I'm going to have a promotion running for our Valentine's Day episode. If you realize, we'll be airing next week on Valentine's Day itself. So I'm going to have a promotion going on Instagram, but I'm going to post it on other social media platforms. And I'm going to include that on the show notes for this episode. Thank you for listening, guys. Bye. Thank you for listening, and hope you join me for the next episode. You can always reach us via email at africanteapot@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at African_teapot.